Imagine a puzzle frozen in time for 20 years, a mystery that seemed impossible to solve,
Absolutely.
and then suddenly a breakthrough, a single piece of evidence that unlocks the whole thing.
Yeah, that's the power of cold cases. They grip our imagination because they represent these unfinished stories.
Right, and today we're diving deep into one of those stories, the case of Jason Royter, found stabbed to death in his Salt Lake City home back in 2005.
It's a case that baffled investigators for years, but recent advancements in DNA technology have brought a glimmer of hope and a long-awaited arrest.
So let's start at the beginning. August 6th, 2005. What happened to Jason Royter?
Well, on that day, Jason, a 33-year-old, was found murdered in his home.
Yeah, and it was his girlfriend who actually found him, right?
Tragically, yes.
Wait,
She came home and discovered in there multiple stab wounds, no sign of forced entry.
oh my gosh, that's awful. I mean, that must have been terrifying for her.
Absolutely. And of course, for Jason's family and friends, the news was just devastating.
So what did the police do at that point?
Well, they immediately launched an investigation focusing on those closest to Jason, friends, family, acquaintances.
Right.
They interviewed dozens of people, collected evidence, and followed every lead they could find.
Did they have any suspect?
I mean, there were some people of interest, but nothing concrete enough to make an arrest. They just couldn't find that one key piece of evidence to crack the case.
So what happened then?
Sadly, the case went cold, the leads dried up, and despite the best efforts of the investigators, they just couldn't make any headway.
A decade of silence for Jason's family. It's hard to even imagine.
It is. And that's one of the hardest things about cold cases for the families and loved ones left behind. It's the not knowing, the lack of closure that can be just so difficult to bear.
But then something changed, right?
Yes, in 2015, a glimmer of hope emerged. The case was handed over to the Salt Lake County Cold Case Unit.
Okay, these units, they're specifically dedicated to revisiting old unsolved cases like this, right?
Exactly. These detectives, they're like those puzzle masters you mentioned earlier. They pore over old case files, look for any missed clues, any new angles to investigate.
So did they find something new in Jason's case?
Not right away. They spent years reviewing the evidence, re-interviewing witnesses, and chasing down every possible avenue.
And all that time, Jason's family is waiting and hoping.
Absolutely. But in 2024, a major breakthrough arrived.
What happened?
It all came down to DNA.
Ah, the game changer in so many cold cases these days.
Exactly. The Utah Bureau of Forensic Services was conducting some routine DNA analysis when a sample from a man named Mark Munoz popped up as a match to evidence collected at Jason's murder scene.
Whoa, so this Munoz guy, his DNA was already in the system.
Yeah, he'd had prior run-ins with the law, so his DNA profile was on file, and this time it led straight back to Jason Royter's case.
So did they arrest him right away?
Well, that's where things got a little tricky. It turned out that Munoz was unhoused and living off the grid. No fixed address, no phone, no easy way to track him down.
Wow, so even with the DNA match, they still had a real challenge on their hands.
Exactly, and this is something we see often in cold cases. The suspect might have moved, changed their identity, or vanished entirely.
So what do they do?
The detectives used every resource at their disposal. They worked with homeless outreach programs, followed up on any potential sightings, and finally, after a lot of hard work, they located Munoz and brought him in.
And he was charged with Jason Royter's murder.
That's right. At 53 years old, Mark Munoz was finally facing justice for a crime committed 2 decades earlier.
Sheriff Rosie Rivera actually made a statement about the arrest. She said it was a testament to the dedication of the detectives who never gave up on finding justice for Jason.
Yeah, she also mentioned how Jason died a very tragic death, and they wanted to make sure that justice was served. It's a sentiment I think a lot of people can relate to, especially after such a long wait for answers.
So what's next for this case?
Well, the investigation is still ongoing. Detectives are gathering additional evidence to build their case against Munoz. They'll likely be looking for witnesses, corroborating evidence, anything that can connect Munoz to the crime beyond the DNA.
I mean, this whole case is a reminder that justice can be a long time coming, but it's never truly out of reach.
Absolutely. And it highlights the incredible impact that advancements in DNA technology are having on cold cases across the country.
It's giving hope to families who thought they'd never see justice for their loved ones.
And it's sending a clear message that even after 20 years, the truth can still come to light.
This case reminds us that justice can be delayed, but not always denied. What other cold cases might be waiting for that crucial piece of evidence to emerge?
Yeah, it really makes you wonder what other stories are out there waiting to be told.
Thanks for joining me on this deep dive. It's been a fascinating and I think important look at how cold cases are solved and the impact they have on everyone involved.
My pleasure. It's always a privilege to share these stories and to remind people that even in the darkest of times, hope can still prevail.
And to all our listeners out there, if you have any information about any unsolved cases, no matter how small you think it might be, please come forward. Your tip could be the one that brings justice and closure to a grieving family.
You never know what piece of the puzzle you might be holding.
Until next time, stay curious and keep exploring.
And never give up hope.